By the year 2020, games have completely adopted online play. Online multiplayer has been normalized, and it's gone from something which was a feature, a privilege to have, to something which is now expected. But to understand how we got here, we have to have a look at where this transformation occurred.
Uniwa.
The early 2010s were a remarkably unique time for video games. This was the point past the experimental 2000s where game developers and console manufacturers were desperately trying to figure out the logistics of online gaming. In the 2010s, online multiplayer felt figured out. Internet connectivity was spreading to every corner of the world, meaning many more people were being exposed to online gaming communities. And sure, sometimes it didn't work too well, maybe sometimes the amount of things you could do online were limited, but we didn't care. The novelty of being able to sit in my room and play a game with someone else across the globe was something magical. It really was a transitionary period from gaming in the 2000s, where online gaming was new and strange, and where we are now, which has online gaming conformed to a rigid formula which it rarely strays from. These games may not hold up to today's standards, but they helped shape online gaming. I can remember fondly playing games like Club Penguin, Pop Tropica, Pokemon Platinum, Wizard 101, and being amazed at all the other players around me, knowing that every character I saw moving was another person controlling their avatar in real time. And as a kid, this was something incredible to see happen. It felt like as I was growing up, so was technology. I went from playing Wii Sports with my cousins to playing Little Big Planet with completely random people from different edges of the globe in a matter of a couple years. I know that for a lot of people, online gaming just meant couch co-op and LAN parties didn't have to be in person, but I was personally more interested in the little things game companies tried with their new online capabilities. Things that these game developers really didn't have to add to their games, but that they added anyway. And I think one of the best examples of these throwaway online features is Pokemon X and Y's Wonder Trade. If you don't know, Wonder Trading is pretty simple. You and another random player are matched up. You're only really given a little bit of information about this player, their name, their location, and a catchphrase that they can assign to themselves. Each player selects a Pokemon and they trade. You don't know what the other player sent you until the trade is already over. This is such a simple concept, but it was so incredibly addictive. It was ridiculously fun to trade with randoms that it sprouted a community of people who used Wonder Trade religiously. You could almost have a glimpse into the people who were sending you these Pokemon. There were always, of course, the early game Pokemon, level 2s and 3s. Sometimes there would be Pokemon that were trained to a high level, which was cool. It felt like someone actually cared to send something that wasn't just caught outside of the first town. And of course, there were a lot of hacked Pokemon. Features like Wonder Trade don't make or break games, but that's not the point of them. They're meant to give the game charm, something to bring you back to the game when you need a break from the story. But eventually, inevitably, you have to go back to the main game, and once you're done with the main story, features like these get forgotten. New games come out, new things capture your interest, and you move on. You go to the next biggest game because eventually playing the same game over and over gets stale. And as online multiplayer settled into its niches, features like this started becoming scarcer. It was a subtle change, but online gaming became streamlined and began to feel much more uniform than before. I guess it made sense that game developers wanted online gaming to feel more robust, but in all honesty, I did miss that quirkier feeling that online multiplayer used to have. Now, I'm someone who tends to revisit things. I like to go back to things that I used to love and see if they still hold up. It's been a big theme in my life ever since my adolescence, but a lot of times when I go back to these early 2010s games, I find a glaring problem with them. The Wi-Fi services shut down, and I get it. It makes sense that as a game loses popularity, eventually it'll become more effort to keep the servers up than to just close them, but it still hurts when a childhood favorite game doesn't feel the same, like there's a piece missing from the game that may never be recaptured. In completely multiplayer games like MMOs, this means the game is over and no longer playable, unless a dedicated community of players decide to host the servers themselves. But in the case of single-player games, most of the game is still here. Most of these online features were just fluff anyway, right? So then, why do these games feel so much more isolated now that they're cut off from all the other players who also enjoy it? Why do these games feel so much emptier? In my opinion, it's because these memories of this game's online features are locked behind a brick wall. It's almost impossible to recapture these memories, and even with fan methods of doing so, it's not really the same. So even though you're still able to walk, fight, and progress your way through these games, and all the main content is still there, the game will always feel emptier than it used to. The inescapable truth that another player will never grace the screen ever again haunts these games, and is the main reason these games can never feel the same as they used to. So in my realization that these games will always have a piece missing is also an understanding that these games are still great and always will be. Even though I know the experiences I had as a kid growing up with an internet connection can never truly be replicated, I have to be okay with that. The fact that they're irreplicable is probably the reason why they've become so important to me in the years since then.
Have you ever wished that you could feel it deep? Girl, let's. Have you ever wished that you could feel it deep? Girl, well this is